So when Queen Anne Boleyn was executed, the plan was simple. Erase her from history. Just gone. But there was one tiny problem. Her 2-year-old daughter, Elizabeth. And that little girl would grow up to become one of England's greatest monarchs. And in what has to be one of the most incredible acts of defiance and, well, love, she spent her entire reign rebuilding her mother's reputation, piece by piece. So yeah, let's dive into the amazing story of how Queen Elizabeth I didn't just rule, she vindicated her mother. We really have to start with Anne Boleyn herself. At her own trial, facing a verdict that was already a done deal, she spoke these words. She knew the charges against her, adultery, incest, treason, were a complete sham. She was hinting at the real reason, right? The king just wanted a new wife. It sets the stage perfectly for this whole story of unbelievable injustice.
All right, so let's start with part one, a queen condemned. To really get what Elizabeth was up against, we need to see just how brutally and efficiently her mother was taken down.
Okay, I want you to picture this. It's May 15th, 1536. You've got about 2,000 people, 2,000 crammed into the Tower of London, and they've built this massive platform, not for some party, but so that every single person there can get a good look at the Queen of England on trial for her life. This was designed to be a public humiliation from the get-go.
And let's be clear, this trial was a joke from the very beginning. Just look at who they put in the room. The jury, packed with her biggest political enemies. And the guy in charge, the presiding judge, that was her own uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, who, by the way, couldn't stand her. It was a perfectly set trap.
And if you need a smoking gun, well, here it is. While Anne is literally preparing to defend her life, her husband, King Henry VIII, is busy writing love notes to his next wife, Jane Seymour. And in one of them, he promises her he'll have news soon of the condemnation of the putain, which is a really nasty French word for a whore. This tells you everything, doesn't it? The trial was just theater. The verdict was already in. But here's the thing. Even with all that stacked against her, the people who were actually there, the chroniclers, they all said Anne's defense was brilliant. She gave wise and discreet answers to every single charge, making her case so well that it seemed impossible she could actually be guilty. Of course, none of it mattered. The jury came back with the only verdict Henry was ever going to accept: guilty. So in those final, chilling moments of the trial, they formally stripped her of her crown, of all her titles. And then, as they led her out, the jailer walked in front of her, holding the executioner's axe, with the blade turned towards her. It was this big public signal for everyone to see. This woman is going to die.
So that brings us to part two, the traitor's daughter. And at the center of this is, of course, the young Elizabeth. Think about it. Her mother is now a convicted traitor, and she's just been declared illegitimate. Her future was, it was anything but certain.
But Elizabeth was absolutely her mother's daughter. Even years later, when her Catholic half-sister, Queen Mary, was on the throne, people noticed her defiance. The Venetian ambassador wrote this fascinating note, saying that even though Elizabeth knows that she was born of such a mother, she didn't consider herself one bit inferior to the actual queen. She would argue passionately about the validity of her parents' marriage. Now, in a time like that, with all the religious and political chaos, that wasn't just pride. That was survival. The fight for her mother's name, and her own, had already started. And then it happened. Against all odds, Elizabeth becomes queen, and boy, she did not waste a single moment. She immediately kicked off what has to be one of the most brilliant PR campaigns in history, the systematic, public, and legal restoration of her mother, Queen Anne Boleyn. And you gotta understand, for a new Protestant queen, this wasn't just personal. It was politically essential for her own right to rule.
So how'd she do it? Well, it was a brilliant two-step plan. Step 1, the huge public spectacle of her coronation pageant. Step 2, a powerful act of parliament. So get this, as the brand new Queen Elizabeth is riding through the streets of London for her coronation, the procession passes by this enormous multi-level stage built for the occasion. And who's up there for everyone to see? An effigy of her mother, Anne Boleyn, wearing a crown and holding a scepter, right there next to Henry VIII. This was a massive public statement to the entire world. It basically screamed, my mother was a legitimate queen. And then, not even 2 weeks later, she followed it up with the legal hammer. Her very first parliament passed this landmark act. The title says it all, really. This wasn't just a nice thought. This was now the law of the land. It legally reinstated Anne, calling her the late Queen Anne, and it restored Elizabeth as her true heir. It was a complete, formal, legal takedown of her mother's conviction, and it was designed to shut up anyone who would ever dare call Elizabeth illegitimate again. But this is my favorite part. This is where you see the daughter behind the queen. If you look at the journal from the House of Lords, you find that in the original draft of that act, she didn't just write the late Queen Anne. The first draft read, "My dearest mother." They ended up taking that phrase out for the final legal version, but the fact that it was there in the first place, it tells you everything. This wasn't just politics. This was deeply, deeply personal. Okay, so let's get into the Phoenix legacy, because that legal act, that was just the beginning. For the next 44 years of her reign, Elizabeth kept honoring her mother, weaving Anne's legacy right into the fabric of her court and her own identity.
So how did she do it? A lot of it was through some really clever and powerful symbolism. She basically took Anne's personal badges and made them her own. Suddenly, Anne's crowned white falcon, a symbol of royalty, started popping up everywhere. She used the armillary sphere, another one of Anne's favorites. And then there was the big one, the phoenix.
And look, this symbolism was not subtle at all. The writers at the time were totally open about it. The phoenix was a direct symbol of Queen Elizabeth rising from the ashes of her mother, Anne Boleyn. Her incredible, long reign became her mother's final vindication. It was like a queen reborn from a queen who was destroyed. Just wow.
But maybe the most powerful piece of evidence of all was something Elizabeth kept totally private, a secret she wore on her finger for her entire life. When she died, they found this special locket ring on her hand, a ring that people said she never, ever took off. When they finally opened it up, this ring, which we now call the checkers ring, it revealed two tiny hidden portraits. One was of Elizabeth, the powerful Queen of England, and the other was a portrait of her mother, Anne Boleyn. Think about that. Through all those decades, every political crisis, every personal struggle, she was secretly carrying her mother with her the entire time. So what does this all leave us with? You have this incredible story of a daughter's love and a queen's power. Elizabeth used her authority not just to rule England, but to literally rewrite her family's history, to fight for the memory of the mother she hardly even got to know. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Can history truly be rewritten? It's a powerful reminder that history isn't always about what happened, but about who gets to tell the story.